Hey there, everybody, and welcome to my page. I'm Mary Gilkerson, if we haven't met before. And today I want to talk a little bit about my preferred painting surfaces for when I'm working on a daily painting project. Right now we are gearing up for a 5-day painting challenge over in my free Facebook group, Art Work Living. And what we'll be doing starting next Wednesday, the 25th, is to make a small painting a day, every day for 5 days. And each day, we're not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on that painting. We're going to spend roughly 20 to 40 minutes on that, not including paint mixing time or sketching time. So one of the questions that I got yesterday about the challenge was what kind of surfaces I recommended that people paint on. So I pulled together a bunch of different ones that I like an awful lot so that y'all can see what I use and then make some choices and decisions of your own. So most of these would apply to primarily oil painting, but they could work also for acrylics. Then I'll go over just a few suggestions for things like watercolor or gouache. So if you're going to be painting in oils, then the main surface that I work on, especially when I'm doing plein air, is the ampersand gesso board. It is I like the thin ones. They're the 1/8 inch, and they come with a surface on them when they're the ampersand ones that's all ready to go. It's pre-gessoed. It's got a little tiny tooth to it. It's great for working with a palette knife or a large brush. It holds onto the paint really, really well for any kind of wet approach. And I take these out when I'm painting taped to a foam core board. So I put loops of tape on the back here and then stick that down to a foam core board so that it won't move around or go anywhere. They work like a charm. They're absolutely the main thing that I paint on almost all the time. So that's the first one that I would recommend. Blick has their own brand that works really well too. There are a couple of them out there that are super cheap that I would not recommend. So it's one of those things that you really do get what you pay for. So be careful when you're buying those prepared panels, the ones that have gesso already on them, that you really are getting a quality one, because the super cheap ones are really slick and the paint doesn't really stick to them well. So love the Blick brand and the ampersand brand. One of the things that I think really helps tremendously when you're doing a daily painting project is making whatever it is that you're painting on not be so precious, i.e. expensive, that you get inhibited by it. Hey Joanne, it's good to see you here. So one of the main surfaces that I recommend is the Arches oil paper if you're an oil painter. So Arches oil paper comes in pads and sheets, and it looks like this, not super heavy weight, not drawing weight size. Looks just like hot press watercolor paper. And it has a lot of those same properties. It's just been impregnated with a resin so that you don't have to do anything to it to get ready to paint on it in oils. So you can dive right on in. And one of the things that I love about it that's kind of an advantage is that you can cut it to whatever size you want. So if you want to make 4x6s, you can cut it and have ones that are that size. You can go 10x10s, whatever size you want. So it makes it much more affordable to do those small, regular daily paintings. Now, a surface that I didn't pull because I couldn't find where I had any of it here in the studio in Savannah is pre-gessoed canvas. I know I've got some stuff somewhere, but I don't know where I put it. So that you can buy by the yard at the art supply store, or online at any of those online suppliers like City Art Online or Blick or Jerry's, any of those guys. When you buy it by the yard, it's canvas that's already gessoed, ready to paint on. And again, just like the Arches oil paper, you can cut it to size. So you don't have to stretch it to paint on it. If you're going to paint small, you can tape it down to a hard surface, like a foam core board using that blue painter's tape or masking tape, and go to town. It's ready to go. And it's not going to be so expensive that you're going to be afraid of messing up or afraid of making mistakes. That's what we want to eliminate, is that fear of failure. So make whatever it is that you're working on, the surface, not be so precious that you're going to worry about making a mess. I want y'all to make a lot of messes next week when we dive into the challenge, because that's where the magic happens. Really want you to dive in and try some of that stuff out. Now, when I have done my own regular daily painting projects, a lot of times I will use cradled panels. So this is an example of one of them. This is a 6x8, and it is a piece of poplar wood, raw wood, and it's got a cradle on the back. The cradle looks like stretcher bars. Does a lot of the same thing. It keeps the thin wood panel from warping. Now, you can't just paint straight on the raw wood. You have to do something to it first. And what I recommend doing to it is getting some shellac, not varnish, but shellac from Home Depot, Lowe's, any of those places. You can order it still online, and put 3 to 4 thin coats on the front, the back, and the sides. You need to do that to seal the wood if you're going to paint on it. Then if you want to put some gesso on the front, you can put a coat or two of gesso on there, so you'll have a white surface to work on. You can actually paint directly on the shellac if you want to. But you got to do something to prep that surface first. And the reason is that wood has acid in it. And if you don't prep it, or if you use something that's too permeable, the acid from the wood will go into the painting, and the oil from the painting will go into the wood, and that spells disaster for the long-term lifespan of your painting. So make sure you prep those raw wood panels if you're going to do that yourself. You can also buy wood like birch ply, poplar plywood at Home Depot or Lowe's and have it cut for you if that's what you want to do. Prep it the same way. What it looks like, and I use the amber shellac, is it looks like this one that I've got all prepped and ready to go. So I think this is a 10 by 20, and you can see it's the same kind cradled wood panel, and it's got shellac on the front, the sides, and the back, so that it's going to be protected. It is all ready to dive in and paint on, already as it is. Another surface, you want to spend a little bit more money and not do it yourself. There are 2 other surfaces that I like a lot. Blick makes its own canvas and linen covered panels that are fantastic. I've been experimenting with those, and they work really, really nicely. High quality, archival. You want to make sure you get the ones that are the professional grade. So this is a linen panel that is ready to go, and it's been acrylic primed, so I could use acrylics on it or oils. Check the priming. Don't paint with acrylics on top of an oil primer. But again, I don't have to do anything to this. It's ready to dive in on. Comes in all kind of different sizes. Then my absolute favorite, all-time favorite, are the Raymar panels. And Raymar is a small company here in the States that makes panels, professional grade panels for artists. And this one is an 8 by 10 linen panel that's prepped with acrylic so that it's ready to be used. And again, they're archival. They're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to warp, so that anything you paint on them is going to be standard professional grade. Might not be what you want to use for the challenge, where you're going to be painting a lot and you don't want to fear making a mistake. But if you want to invest in some for the future, they're fun, and they also have a fantastic surface. The only problem with linen is once you start using it, it's addictive. So it should come with a warning label. what I really love about linen, somebody asked me about this not long ago, is that the surface has a tooth that's not quite as regular as canvas, and it grabs hold of paint in a little bit different way. It's like the difference between Arches watercolor paper, really, really high grade, or Fabriano watercolor paper, and a less expensive brand. It really has a quality to the surface that's hard to beat, and it really is wonderful to paint on. They make them in different thicknesses. This is a little bit thicker kind. It's the 1/8 panel. My favorite ones of these are the Feather Lights for painting plein air. They're super thin and super lightweight, so it makes it a great surface to take outside when you're painting outside. So those are the main ones that I would recommend for the challenge, but you can paint on whatever you've got. Somebody asked me about canvas paper yesterday. Absolutely, if that's what you've got in stock, paint on canvas paper. If you're working in acrylics, any of the things that I've talked about today will work fine. You don't need the Arches oil paper. You can just get some regular drawing or printmaking paper, gesso it, and go to town. You'll be fine on that. If you're working on watercolor, then something like the Arches 140-pound weight, when you tape it down, is not going to go anywhere. You don't really need to have the 300-pound weight for a challenge project. You can also use something like Stonehenge printmaking paper and use that for any of the mediums. If you're going to use it for oils, you need to gesso it first. So the sky's the limit. Do whichever medium works for you on whichever surface works for you. If you want to just draw and work on drawings and thumbnails during that time, fine, have at it. The main goal of the challenge, well, there's several main goals, but the main goal of the challenge is to see what you can accomplish in small blocks of time when you do it every day, and to begin to build a painting habit, not just a painting occasion. Then on top of it, right now, given that we're in some challenging times, I want us to paint our way through it, because when you're focused on painting, the anxiety lifts. And I know a lot of people are really anxious right now. We need to let go of some of that. We've got a lot of good reasons to be anxious. I don't want to minimize any of that. But at the same time, I want us to let go of some of it, because your immune system will be better off if you are. Your day will go better if you let go of it. So let's think about how we can stay resilient, wash our hands, and paint on. Because when you paint and you're focused, you let all of that other stuff go. So let's practice that over the coming weeks that we've got ahead. So I'm going to check in here to see the cat strolling through. See what questions we've got here in the group. Hey, Jan, it's good to see you from Boston. And I see some of my former students and my former studio assistant in here. Hey, Gwen at the bot, it's good to see you. And Pat Vredenberg. Houston is rainy. Well, we've got sunshine here in Savannah. It's sunny and hot, and I'm not going to complain about it right now. Susan says she loves Arches oil paper. It does let you play without worrying about dollars. I love it too, Susan. I've even bought some Raymar panels that have the Arches oil paper mounted on it. I think it relieves a lot of stress when you can minimize the cost there, and it's still a really good quality product. And Sheila says it's sunny in Baltimore. Awesome. Hey, Claire. And Jeff Davenport. Awesome. Ashley Welch, shout out to you. She says those panels bringing back some memories. Never prepped so many surfaces in my life. Awesome. I still have some of them you prepped, Ashley. Yeah, Ashley used to prep my panels for me. So yeah, I miss you too, kiddo. So hope you're having some good quality time right now, and you can dive in and join us in the challenge. Just grab that sketchbook and go to town. And Betty Majorca, good to see you. Do you have info somewhere on how to make the cradles for panels? I don't make those myself, Betty. I get those already put together. I buy them as raw wood ready to go, and usually get those from City Art. So the cradle could be something as simple as stretcher bars. So if you go get the standard size stretcher bars, you can glue those onto the back of the birch ply that you pick up. That's the easiest thing to do. Otherwise, you want to get pine 1x2s and miter them and cut them to size and glue them with wood glue. Don't nail them to the birch ply. You want to glue it with wood glue. So that's the best way to do it. But it could be as unpretty and as functional as just regular stretcher bars that are the same size. And hey, Vicky Kirby and Fiona. Joanne says, do you tape the size of your shellacked panel, or are you a careful painter? I do not tape my panels. I never have, Joanne. One of the things about the shellac is you can wipe off any paint that gets on the sides relatively easily, as long as it's still wet. So if I get some on the sides, I just wipe it away. No longer with a paper towel, but with some recycled old t-shirts, things like that. So you can wipe those off. You don't have to worry about taping the sides. One of the problems that I've found with taping the sides is that paint can seep underneath and it can tear the paint surface when you're pulling it off. It sometimes causes more problems than it solves. So I don't do that. I just wipe if I need to. Sheila, I know you are fearless. It's one of the things I think is my favorite things about you. And hey, Sharon, it's good to see you here. And Peggy Erickson says, what brand of gesso is good? Utrecht's professional grade gesso is great. Golden's professional grade gesso is really, really good. One of the things that I've noticed over the last 10 years is the quality of the average gesso has gone down. I think one of the things that they've done is that most companies have started adding more filler to the gesso and extender rather than raising the price. And as a result, it takes actually more of the gesso to do the same thing in prepping. So it really does pay to get a good quality product there. So I've used the Utrecht professional grade gesso for years, and the Golden. Both are really, really good. But right now, for what we're going to be doing in the challenge, whatever gesso you get your hands on will be fine. So don't overthink that one. I'm glad you're looking forward to it, Carol. Cool. And I agree, Sheila Walsh, painting is the best meditation when you're not meditating. Painting is a meditation. It definitely helps to create a state of flow, which is when you kind of lose yourself in your painting. And that's what I'm hoping that we'll all get around to next week in the challenge. Deepa, the challenge starts on Wednesday, the 25th. So I'll put the link here in the caption right above, the post right above, so that you can click on it when we're done. But the challenge starts the 25th. So all week, over the next week, I'll be going live on Facebook giving y'all tips to get ready for it and talking about ideas of things you can do to make it easier. And then during the challenge, we'll be having some Zoom calls with the daily prompts in there for those who have registered. So yeah, it's starting in just a little less than a week. Susan Hayden says when she had a job, she used SourceTech linen panels all the time. Yeah, they're good too. The only thing I don't like about the SourceTech, and this is just, I have my own finicky preferences, is the SourceTech panels are so thick. They feel like they are super, super thick in comparison to the Raymar. And so they weigh more. And when I'm out plein air painting, I don't like to carry any extra weight, even if I'm just painting out of the back of the car like I have been lately. So they are heavier. That's my only complaint about them. But you can find those at most of the major art supply stores as well. They are good. Sherry says, do you mount Arches oil paper on foam core board? I sure do. I just use the blue tape to do that. So for example, if I want to paint a 5x7, I will cut out pieces that are 7x9, and I'll tape off a 1-inch border all the way around so that it's not gonna or maybe a 1/2 inch border all the way around so that it's not going to I'll have a space there that I can trim off later. But yeah, I'll use blue tape and just tape around the edges onto the foam core board. And yeah, Arches oil paper is only for oils, Carol. It is specifically made for painting in oils without having to do any prep on it. It's awesome stuff. Sheila says, when you mount paper or canvas, what do you use to glue them? When I mount them onto a panel, I use the golden gel medium. You can also use something called Miracle Muck, which is reversible. Golden medium is not. It's glued down for life. But Miracle Muck means that you could reverse it and take it and mount it on something else later if you wanted to. So that works like a charm. Helen says, I did have a canvas to paint on and used my denim pants to paint on. It came out pretty, oh, didn't have a canvas to paint on. It came out pretty cool. Awesome. Yeah, you can paint on all kind of things, especially in a pinch. Carolyn says, I just tried using a solid surface and tried Alumacomp, but the texture was off-putting. Heavily textured, was rough on my brushes. You got to be really careful with the texture of what you're painting on. If it's super, super rough, it can act like sandpaper and wear down your brushes. And I used not to sand my canvas when I gessoed it. And I'd put 3 or 4 coats of gesso on there. And it would get a real, almost like sandpaper, heavy sandpaper tooth to it. And it really wore down my bristle brushes. So I started sanding in between. And hey, Lisa Miller, it's good to see you. So I think I have caught all of the questions in there so far. If y'all have any others that pop up, let me know. Pop them in here and I'll check back through in here later. So keep your eye peeled tomorrow, same time, same bat cave. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that you can do to prep for the challenge, specifically about photographs and how you can use those as sources in the challenge. Take care, everybody. Remember, wash your hands, stay resilient, and paint on. Talk to you soon.